Imagine stepping into the center of the ancient world. The throne room of the most powerful empire on earth appears before your eyes. The air is thick with the scent of frankincense and myrrh, the aroma of divinity and absolute power. The surrounding walls are brilliantly gilded, inlaid with lapis lazuli, and guarded by colossal statues of deities holding the balances of the universe. In the center, sitting upon a towering throne, is a man who does not merely rule a vast kingdom stretching along the Nile, but believes himself to be the incarnation of the Supreme Being. He is Pharaoh. To millions of Egyptians, he is not a mere mortal. He is the son of the sun god Ra. He is the sole bridge between the divine realm and humanity. His breath determines the rising and setting of the sun, and his word ensures the Nile floods each year to bring life to the harvest. In Pharaoh's mind, he is the one keeping the cosmos from collapsing. And then, stepping into that room of absolute power, is a man of stark contrast. It is Moses, an 80-year-old shepherd, draped in tattered clothes, stained by the dust of the Midian desert for 40 long years. He brings no battle-hardened army. He brings no weapons or silver. In his hand, he holds only a withered wooden staff. Yet, that aging shepherd brings a devastating message from a God the Egyptians have never known, the God of an enslaved people, the God of mud-kneading brickmakers. That message is incredibly brief but carries the weight of a declaration of war. Let my people go. This fateful encounter ignited one of the most dramatic, violent, and awe-inspiring sequences of events in all of human literary and religious history, the story of the 10 plagues. It is an epic of rivers turning to blood, swarms of frogs, skies darkened by locusts, and the sun extinguished at noon. However, beneath the terror of these natural disasters, beneath that ultimate display of power, lies a deeply complex psychological and theological portrait. It touches upon one of the most agonizing questions humanity has asked for millennia. Throughout the narrative in the book of Exodus, there is a recurring phrase that makes many readers shudder and feel perplexed. God hardened Pharaoh's heart. This phrase poses a paradox that seems to contradict everything we understand about a just and loving God. If God actively intervened, stripped Pharaoh of his free will, and forced him to be hard-hearted, why then did he punish him for it? Did God set up a rigged game? Did he turn Pharaoh into a puppet, forcing him to play the cruel tyrant just so he would have an excuse to bring disaster upon Egypt, crush this empire, and drown its army at the bottom of the Red Sea to show off his power to the world? If the director wrote the script and forced the actor to play the villain, how can the actor be condemned? Many skim through this story and walk away with an image of an arbitrary, manipulative God who treats humans as expendable pawns. But that is a disastrous misunderstanding. When we carefully trace back through time, peeling back the layers of context in history, culture, and the ancient Hebrew language, a completely different picture emerges. This is not a story about a deity forcing an innocent man to sin. This is a terrifyingly brilliant and deterrent sequence where a man's ultimate pride is eventually locked into place by God as an act of righteous judgment. To truly understand why God hardened Pharaoh's heart, we must begin with a theological autopsy. We must dissect the very concept of the heart in the ancient mind. To modern humans living in the 21st century, the heart is often romanticized. It is the center of emotion, of love, of fluttering feelings. When we say someone has a hard or cold heart, we imply they lack empathy, are unfeeling or apathetic. But to the ancient Hebrews, the heart, lev or levav in Hebrew, carried a much deeper and holistic meaning. The heart was not just emotion, it was the control center of the entire soul. It housed reason, intellect, will, and was the seat of all decision-making. When the Bible speaks of the heart, it is speaking of the core of your identity, the command center of who you are, and a crucial detail that English translations often miss. When the text says Pharaoh's heart was hardened, it does not use just one word. The original Hebrew uses 3 entirely different words to describe the inner collapse of this king. Each word is a piece of the judgment puzzle. The first word is kabod. Kabod literally means to make heavy. In the context of ancient Egypt, this carried a profoundly ironic and terrifying connotation. Egyptians were obsessed with death and the afterlife. They believed that after breathing their last, the soul would be brought to the judgment hall of Osiris. There, the heart of the deceased would be placed on a scale, counterbalanced by the feather of Ma'at, the goddess representing truth, justice, and cosmic order. If the person lived a righteous life, The heart would be as light as the feather, and they would enter eternal peace. But if that heart was heavy with sin, cruelty, and pride, the scale would sink. The heart would immediately be thrown to the monster Amit, the devourer of souls, and the person's existence would be erased forever. When the Bible ironically states that Pharaoh made his heart kabod, heavy, it means he was voluntarily loading his soul with arrogance, wickedness, and obstinacy. He was determining his own sentence before the belief system of his own people. The second word is kasha. Kasha means to make stiff-necked or stubborn. This word was typically used in agriculture to describe a stubborn ox or donkey, stiffening its neck and refusing to turn regardless of the farmer's whip or reins. Applied to Pharaoh, it paints the picture of a man who clearly sees the evidence of supernatural power, feels the crushing weight of the disasters ruining his country, hears the cries of his people, yet grits his teeth and braces himself against a higher authority. He refuses to bow. The third, and perhaps most complex word, is chazak. Chazak means to make strong, resolute. Interestingly, in most of the Bible, this word is used positively. For instance, when God commands Joshua before entering the Promised Land, he says, "Be strong and courageous." That is chazak. But when applied to Pharaoh's heart, a virtue is twisted into something dark. It becomes a blind resolution in a disastrous decision. It is knowing you are driving towards death, but still using every ounce of your willpower to press the gas pedal over the cliff. Pharaoh was not just stubborn. He actively cultivated the strength to fight God to the bitter end. Pharaoh's stubbornness is not just a matter of semantics. The real key to solving the theological dilemma of free will lies in the timeline. When someone asks you, "Who hardened Pharaoh's heart?" the correct answer must be, it depends on what stage of the story you are looking at. God is omniscient. He knows everything from beginning to end. From the burning bush on Mount Sinai, before Moses ever set foot back in Egypt, God declared, "I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him." God knew Pharaoh's nature. He knew exactly how he would react. But foreknowledge does not equate to coercive predestination. Knowing someone will make a wrong choice does not mean you grab their hand and force them to make it. Consider the first encounter carefully. When Moses and Aaron stood before the throne and delivered God's demand, there was no supernatural interference in the Egyptian king's mind. Pharaoh's response sprang entirely from the natural ego of a man drunk on absolute power. "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go." A cold, definitive, and entirely voluntary refusal. Then the real battle began with a warm-up, when Aaron's staff turned into a snake and swallowed the snakes of the Egyptian magicians. Pharaoh's heart hardened. Next came the first plague. The Nile turned to blood. The Nile, the source of life, pride, and the economic lifeblood of all Egypt, reeked for 7 days. The Egyptian magicians replicated this with their secret arts, and the text explicitly states, "Pharaoh turned and went into his house. He did not take this to heart. His heart grew hard on its own." The second plague, frogs overran the land. They crawled into beds, ovens, and upon the royal family. Pharaoh could not bear it and begged Moses to pray for God to take the frogs away. But as soon as the frogs died, leaving a foul stench blanketing the country, the Bible records, "But when Pharaoh saw that there was a respite, he made his heart heavy, kabod, and would not listen to them. He swallowed his own words. He deceived." The third plague, the dust became gnats. This was where Egyptian magic completely failed. The most powerful magicians in the kingdom had to kneel before Pharaoh and tremble. This is the finger of God. Even the idolaters realized they were facing the Creator. But Pharaoh's mind slammed completely shut. He refused to listen even to the counsel of his wisest men. His heart remained hard. The fourth plague, swarms of flies laid waste. And the fifth plague, a pestilence killed all the Egyptian livestock. Throughout this horrific sequence, thousands of animal lives were wiped out. The agricultural economy ground to a halt, but the biblical refrain remained unchanged. Pharaoh hardened his own heart. Pause and look at that sequence. 5 plagues, countless opportunities to repent. Numerous times tasting God's mercy when the disasters were lifted. God was continuously turning up the heat, providing undeniable evidence of his sovereignty, but he never violated Pharaoh's right to choose. Every decision of refusal, every stubborn shake of the head, every betrayal was a calculated, arrogant, and vicious choice made by Pharaoh himself. But then, A terrifying turning point arrived at the sixth plague, boils, when painful sores erupted on the bodies of the Egyptians, making it impossible for the magicians to stand. The biblical language suddenly and chillingly shifted. For the first time, the text says, "But the Lord hardened, chazak, the heart of Pharaoh." Why this change? This is where theology reveals a profound truth: judicial hardening. We often picture God's judgment as lightning striking from the sky, fire consuming, or the earth splitting to swallow the guilty. But the Bible teaches that one of the most terrifying, devastating punishments God can inflict upon a human is when he crosses his arms, steps back, and gives that person exactly what they want. Judicial hardening is not God randomly picking a gentle person and turning them into a demon. It is a sentence carried out on someone who has persistently, proactively, and brutally rejected the light of truth. Use the analogy of the sun. When the sun beats its fierce rays down upon the earth, the nature of the sunlight does not change, but when that sunlight hits a block of wax, the wax softens and melts. When that same sunlight hits a block of clay, the clay loses its moisture, becomes cracked, stiff, and impossible to mold. The command, "Let my people go," was the heat of the sun. When that heat touched the hearts of the Israelites, it melted them into tears of hope and worship. But when that command touched Pharaoh's heart, a block of clay kneaded with pride, violence, and absolute power, it only caused that clay to crack and freeze solid. The Apostle Paul described this exact spiritual phenomenon in chapter 1 of Romans. When speaking of a generation that deliberately suppressed the truth, closed their eyes to the clear evidence of God in the universe, and chose to worship creation instead of the Creator, Paul did not say God instantly destroyed them with fire. Instead, he repeated a haunting phrase 3 times. God gave them up. God gave them up to impurity. God gave them up to dishonorable passions. God gave them up to a debased mind. In other words, the highest punishment for rebellion is to be abandoned entirely to that rebellion. C.S. Lewis, the great Christian thinker, summarized this in an immortal quote: "There are only 2 kinds of people in the end: those who say to God,